Sometimes we say we're starting at noon and we really start at 12:02 p.m. But we are live today, and I am back at it after a wonderful vacation in Maine where I definitely ate lobster. It was delicious. It's kind of nice in the middle of summer in Tennessee to leave and go somewhere cooler. It was like, oh yeah, this is what fall is like. Only that's what their summer is like. But it's definitely nice to take a week off. I'll end up doing a podcast on some things I thought about while I was away, but that's not what today's about because I realized that August is coming to a close and we haven't done the traditional August episode all about winter coming. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And like every other time when I do these live, what's going to happen is we're going to have like the 5-second delay. I'm going to start the music. I'm going to remember to turn the loop thing off, and then we'll record the podcast, all the little 5-second delay, and then handle questions from the live feed as we go. If it fits with the podcast, if you want me to see your question, put it in all caps. If it's like, I'm already past that, because sometimes what happens is your questions come in like 5 minutes after I've been talking about the thing. I'll star it and I'll stay on after and answer those questions. We actually had a question come in on the last live stream after I had already stopped. And then I tried to find the person because it was I can't remember what the question was now. So if you're the person who at the very end put your question in and it never got answered, it was something, I don't know, something I could answer really easily. It may have been about canning. It may have been about something else. I went to your profile because I could see who posted the question, and because you don't have any videos, I couldn't figure out how to contact you because I would have just emailed you the answer. So put that question in again. It doesn't have to necessarily be on today's topic. I will stay on for a bit afterwards. Today is a new schedule for me. Fall has come here, only it's still summer, but my fall schedule has started as of today, which means Mondays I leave early. I go to town. I sing in my choir. So I really try to stack everything into early in the day on Monday. And so if we start pushing the envelope on time and I'm not going to get my podcast produced, we'll end. So that's what's up with the live stream. If you're new to the show, this is a live recording of the Living Free in Tennessee podcast, which is an audio podcast. And you can find all of our past episodes over at livingfreeintennessee.com. And if you are new, don't forget to like and follow the channel and all that good stuff. And if you aren't new and you think somebody might really like these topics, do me a favor, recommend this channel to them, share it with them. It's always good to get new people in the network. With that, I'm going to record the podcast. So get ready for an awkward pause, and then the music will start, and then I'll start the podcast. Ready?
The place to be is living free in Tennessee.
Welcome, everyone, to Living Free in Tennessee, where we talk about building the life you choose on your terms. Today is Monday, August 29th, 2022. This is episode 613 of Living Free in Tennessee. And in August tradition, it is a very important topic, one I like to do in the heat of August when we're all wishing it would snow. Why? Because winter is coming. It's going to be all about what the process we go through on the homestead to get ready for winter. I'm going to share how we plan these activities going into a fairly busy fall. Every fall is busy because hollow roast coffee sales tend to double, triple, or quadruple between now and the end of the year. It'll start about mid-October. It really heats up, but even mid-September, it's already heating up. People are drinking coffee in the fall more. And hollow roast makes great Christmas presents. Plus, I have a couple corporate clients who like to give away different coffee packages as their Christmas giveaway. So we're already starting to produce that now. We're already making plans with our corporate clients now because it takes time to order in. If we do any like special engraved stuff, it takes time to order that stuff in. So that's all starting now. Plus the event cycle between now and mid-November tends to be like everybody's trying to get their conferences in late. And then I sing in a classical choir. So we have a Christmas concert coming, and you may think Christmas in August? What? Yeah, Christmas in August is a thing if you are a musician. So all of that kind of comes to a head right now. And among all of that, I'm on a homestead where if it gets below freezing, things change. And that's why we start planning for Christmas now in August so that we will end up on the first frost day or the first deep frost day, not trying to do all of the things I'm going to talk about in one day. I know some people do that. I did that my first year. But if you're new to homesteading, now's the time to think about animals and plants and humans and pets and structures and everything you're going to need for winter so that you have time to do a little bit each week rather than everything in one day and you didn't get it all done and you had to make some very unfortunate decisions at the last minute. So we'll talk about how we get ready for winter and a little bit more about why we start now in today's show. I do want to remind you, if you want to send me a frugality tip, a stump the sauce question, or anything else, you can do that. Nicole@livingfreeintennessee.com is my email. If you text me on social media and ask me a question and I don't answer it right away because it's hard because I have to go look it up, I will try to remember, but I will probably forget. A text message on my phone, a text via MeWe Messenger or Telegram, any of those things, that is the fastest way I can drop balls on you. So if you've asked and I haven't answered and I said I'll get back to you and I didn't get back to you, it's because I forgot. Email, on the other hand, I actually do not clear my inbox until it's handled. I tend to clump my email time an hour or two a day to get through it as fast as I can. It may take me a while to answer your email, but I'm going much more likely to answer your email if it's an email than if you have sent it via instant message of any kind on any of the million platforms I'm on. And that's the other thing, is I'm on a million platforms. So I'm like, I know somebody asked me a question. I don't know if it was MeWe or Telegram or Signal or Facebook or Twitter or, you see what I'm saying? It's a juggle. So Nicole@livingfreeintennessee.com. If you can't remember that, just know that the podcast is called livingfreeintennessee.com. And if you go to livingfreeintennessee.com and click on contact, those emails come to me. I don't have a team of assistants. It's just me here. Well, I mean, like, y'all know there's a couple of rednecks around here helping out, but it's just me doing that part of the business. Here's what's up this week. So I've wanted to be a little bit more purposeful about what's happening on the schedule. So this week, Wednesday Live with John Willis, which is 12:30 every Wednesday, except for when we do next week's, which is on a different day at a different time because of how schedules worked out. We have Bear Independent coming on at 12:30. So you're going to not want to miss that one. That will be on my YouTube channel, on John Willis's YouTube channel, and probably over on Odyssey. Hey, guys, watching this on Odyssey, I am not seeing your comments right now because I didn't feel like my first day back was when I was prepared to handle multiple screens. So is what it is. If you really need to get a question in, you're going to have to head over to YouTube, your arch nemesis, and get it in. I'm sorry. I'll have that a little bit more under control by the end of the week by the Homestead Update live stream. Speaking of which, Friday at 9:30 a.m., we will be doing our usual Homestead Happenings podcast recording, followed by the big Q&A session we do. Tactical will certainly join me unless something has happened. We will invite Jenny. If she's not working, she might join us. Nighthawk will be at his job, so he won't join us. And we do have 2 new holler neighbors coming in. I don't know if they can hop on or not. They're probably hearing this on the audio podcast going, she hasn't talked to us about this yet. So maybe I'll talk to them before they hear it. Maybe they'll have to reach out to me. I don't know. But we have 2 new holler neighbors moving in on this coming weekend, which is going to be a lot of fun. Finally, John Bush over at Live Free Academy has put together a little online webinar on how to homestead on a budget. So the concept is how to use homesteading in a way to bring your costs down and get value from your land, but also how to do that without spending more money to raise the chickens or the goats than you would have been spending just to buy the chickens or the goats. So it's called Homesteading on a Budget. Paul Wheaton's going to be talking. John Bush is going to be talking. I'm speaking. Marjorie Wildcraft is going to be talking. It is for money. So it's for sale at Live Free Academy. And it may not be super easy to find by just going to that. So I have put a link in the show notes. It's also called Exit and Build Homesteading on a Budget Workshop. So if you type that in, eventually you will get there. Link is in my show notes. And guys on YouTube, I will throw it in the comments for you just in case you want to check it out. I think it's going to be a really fun workshop. I'm looking to do that. That is Saturday, starting at 10 a.m. Central and ending by 5 p.m. Central. Lots of good looking presentations. I'm pretty excited about that one. With that, it's time for our first segment of today's show, and that is Tales from the Prepper Pantry. This is where we talk about storing what you use, using what we store. Things are in total flux here. I was out of town, and my buddy, one of my best friends said, hey, can I come and stay there for a few days because I'm in the area? And I'm like, sure, I'm not home, but you can stay. So he showed up, and I'm like, how's my house look? So I'm wondering, how'd everybody do? And he's like, well, I've seen your house in many states, Nicole. So what he came back to is I have been going through a major declutter purge. Later today on my YouTube channel and into the email that goes out announcing today's podcast show, I'm going to be including a link to a YouTube video I've been using to motivate myself to get rid of a lot of unnecessary stuff so I can make space for things that I want. And when you have a habit of having a deep pantry, it's easy to get into the habit of never throwing away things like this tiny little tripod that sits on a desk that I'm holding for the people. That's a piece of crap that holds your phone up. Like, why do I even still have this? I don't need this. In fact, this is going in Goodwill right after the show, right? You get into this habit of just keeping things like this ring light I never use because it makes a terrible glare on my glasses. Does anybody need a ring light? I have one. I am purging a bunch of homesteading stuff like some fence chargers and other things. I will put that together, I think, on an actual web page on one of my sites for people who are looking for those things. I'm also going to hopefully send them out to Carrie's Sunday swap meet that he does once a month, first Sunday of the month for homesteaders. But all of that is to say it is chaos here. At the same time, I'm like looking at what things do I really need to have, because I want to have everything in my house have a purpose that's important to me, whether it be like this really cool sign behind me that is in celebration of my 500th episode, or something that's a little more useful, like this coaster that's on my desk and keeping rings from getting on the wood, right? All of these things have a purpose. But what has happened to me over 15 years of living in the same place is I have things that used to have a purpose that I don't use anymore. Like I'm getting rid of a Ninja blender system. And the reason I'm getting rid of the Ninja blender system is I also have a wheat grinder. It's electric. And that was great when I was making loaves and loaves and loaves of homemade bread. I'm now keto. I like hardly ever eat wheat. When I do eat too much wheat, my knee like swells up to the size of a baseball. And, so I don't really need the wheat grinder. Occasionally I will want to grind a cup of wheat to use as a thickener in a gravy or something. Like a little bit of wheat doesn't get me, but like a lot of wheat will totally lay me up. And as a result of that, I realized instead of the Ninja blender system, which works great, it's like a blender and then it has those little smoothie cups and it has like a food processor. It has all of that. It's like a system. Instead of using that, I can just get one single Vitamix blender, and they have a flour attachment you can use, but I did some research. You don't have to use it. If you're just doing a little bit of flour every so often, you can use their blender attachment to grind the wheat. And because I'm only going to be grinding maybe a cup, maybe half a cup at a time, I'm upgrading to that blender, selling the Ninja blender. So stuff like that is all happening here. And I bring it up in this section because if you have a habit of having a deep pantry, start looking at what's like this time of year is where you say, okay, summer is coming to a close. And if you're a home canner like I am, what did I not use from last year yet? Put that where you can start using it, or make the decision, I didn't eat that, whatever, canned corn because I don't eat corn anymore. Or I don't like corn. Or maybe you have a bunch of pickled radishes and you don't like pickled radishes, right? Now is a time to be very honest with yourself and say like, yes, I put a lot of effort into this. No, I don't use that. And make space for the things you do use, because you're going to be a lot happier when you're depending on your pantry if you have things you do like and use versus if what you have are 4 cases of pickled radishes and you don't like pickled radishes, but that's all you have left. No bueno, right? That's not good. So that's sort of the process I'm in the middle of. And I have extrapolated it from just the pantry and the food and the supplies to everything in my house. Like if it's a picture on a shelf, do I even know what that picture's about or like it? Did I just put art on the walls that I got so that there would be something on the wall, or do I like the thing on the wall? Like all of that. I'm going to share the video that's motivating me, because it's not like, does this bring me joy? The question she asks herself about sentimental things is, if if I spilled red wine all over this blanket that my grandma used to have, how would I feel? Would I feel kind of relieved because now I don't have to keep it? Or would I be devastated because I love this blanket and I use this blanket? It makes me think of grandma. If it's a former answer, it's time to say goodbye to the sentimental thing. Because a lot of us will keep, like a lot of what's in my life right now from a clutter standpoint is stuff from my grandma and my parents and my other grandma and my aunts and uncles, and like all of these sentimental things, some of which it turns out I don't actually like. So those got to go. And then as those go, what's happening is space is opening up, and I'm able to set up systems, because the other part of having a prepper pantry is you're developing systems in your house. If you have a good system, things keep running and they support you. If you have no system, you end up with a big mess and frustration. And in my house, what I have are both. I have really good systems that work well, also some not so good systems that interfere with the good systems, and they kind of flip over each other. And that's what I'm addressing. Every time I run into a snarl and I'm frustrated, I think to myself, why? What system is not developed right? And why is it not developed right? And usually the answer to that is it's because I haven't made the space for the system. An example of a system is my laundry system. I have a hamper in my bedroom. I have a basket in my mudroom where the laundry is. And I have a series of racks for hanging things. Plus I have a dryer I can use if I want to. And I have dedicated space where I fold those out, right? So laundry goes in the basket when it's dirty. That goes to the laundry room. Laundry gets done. It goes on the rack. It comes back folded and goes away. That is the whole system. It's not a hard system. But if I did not have the basket in my room for it, and if I did not also have a basket for like kitchen towels and stuff in the mudroom, and I didn't have the dedicated space for where the racks go when they're folded and where they go when they're open, I would end up with a huge problem where there would be a backup. You know, I'd either get a mountain of clothes all the time on the floor, or I would have a problem where I can't dry the clothes right, or I would forget them. And once I had that system in place, and then a commitment to myself that laundry is done when it's all the way away, I stopped having problems with what we used to talk about on this podcast, laundry mountain. Laundry mountain, we all know what that is. That's that pile of clothes you need to fold on your sofa, or it's the pile of clothes that are dirty that haven't been done, or it's the pile of clothes on the floor in front of your washer and dryer. You know laundry mountain. We've all had laundry mountain. Sometimes I still get laundry mountain, and it's on my bed, and it's a mountain of clothes that need to be folded that I then can't go to bed because it's on my bed because I ran out of time, right? But when the system's going, I'm good to go. So keeping that in mind, we've been making a lot of broth, because the bones that we keep our bones and we make bone broth out of them. And the freezers, I've had to like really do a lot of freezer Tetris this year because we ended up with a lot of pork from raising the pigs. What that means is that I had to take the bones that are in the freezer out and make the bone broth. And then I have all this broth to use up, which I then canned, so it was shelf stable. But now my jars are full of bone broth, which means I still got to find jars for canning the rest of my green beans and my salsa this year and my tomato sauce and that sort of thing. So what we did is we've made a new commitment to finding new ways to use bone broth. I have too much surplus. So when I look at my whole pantry, I have like gallons and gallons of bone broth. And every time I make a soup or a stew, it's usually with a bone-in piece of meat. So I don't need the broth. So we're looking at recipes for that. And I'm restarting the habit of a morning cup of bone broth when I first get hungry about 10 in the morning. And it was delicious today. I did that. It was great. We're going to use that up. If you have ideas how I can use bone broth up, let me know. Just realize I'm a no carb eater, which means risotto and stuff of that nature is out. And, and I can make soups and stews, but I'm looking like, are there other interesting, unthought of ways to use bone broth? I don't know. Let me know what you think, because I would love more recipes on that. I am hitting the patch of green beans later, probably tomorrow. It would be today. If I have time this afternoon, I will. To pick the green beans, I'm looking to get about 14 more jars of green beans put up for the winter. So hopefully we can knock out a few more jars of that, because the farmer's market is completely dried up. I just happened to keep planting green beans all summer long because my first row of green beans didn't put out very well. My second row should have beans on it now. Tactical ran the sprinkler while I was gone because it's been really hot and sunny again. And we will see. And then there's a third row coming up under the first row. I got to go up there with my trimmers and trim it out, all of that. So just the normal succession planting in the garden means I might make the last 14 jars. We will see. It's my goal. If I don't get there, I don't get there, guys. And then I'm just going to not have those green beans. Luckily, I have a lot of sweet potato greens I can harvest. Plus, I think we're going to have a bumper crop of sweet potatoes out of my aquaponics system, of all things. I wasn't expecting that. I just literally threw the thing in there to make sure that particular cultivar that I'm raising would be available next year, when I will have a different patch in place for my growing of my sweet potatoes. I am initiating a prepper pantry redo, which requires everything to be unloaded from the prepper pantry. We're taking the roof off and then reframing the roof, redoing the roof, resealing the whole thing so it's rodent proof, because we took out my furnace from that room and it left holes, and then rodents can get in. You do not want rodents in your root cellar. So that's happening. And as a result, I'm using the base camp basement as the root cellar. And then this is exciting. I've had freezer sensors and they haven't been great because sometimes they lose connectivity. And I was totally traveling with Chef Brett, and I watched him, his Apple Watch told him that his walk-in freezer at his restaurant was raising in temperature before it came to an unsafe temperature. Okay. I was like, wait, you just got a notice on your watch that your freezer's getting warm. How'd you do that? And do you have to have like Ethernet cable into your kitchen? Like, what's the deal? Because the problem I'm running into is the Wi-Fi doesn't always get into the freezer. And he sent me a link to a whole new set of freezer sensors that I'm going to try out. I will keep you guys posted if they work really well, because one of my bigger fears is that the 3 big freezers we have full of food will fail and I won't notice it. And I sort of check them once a day, but one of them sometimes comes open if you don't lock it. And so if you check it and then you don't lock it, it's sad, because then you could ruin all the food in there because it's an upright. So it's not like a chest freezer. If you leave that open, the top kind of warms up usually, but the bottom stays okay. So I'm checking those out. And that's an important part of pantry management, is just like, how am I keeping my food good? Well, having something that will actually flip and notify me using if this, then that. I'm telling you what, I'm excited to try it out. So we'll be testing that as soon as they come. Okay, now we have the daily sponsor, which is Paul Wheaton. Remember that, guys? Last week we were super excited to announce that Paul Wheaton has sponsored the show. And he listened to what we did last Monday. And I think he got super excited to hear that I have a rocket mass heater here in my pump house. And he got so excited that he decided to do a freebie. So I mentioned the SKIP program last week, right? The SKIP program, it's Skills to Inherit Property. This is where Paul is identifying a problem where people with homesteads who don't have children to pass them on to, either their children don't want to do it or they didn't have children, are looking to pass their homesteads on to somebody who will keep that going on the land. And so he developed the SKIP program. That's what we talked about last time. Now, maybe you want to fast track your journey to self-sustainability or want to get more hands-on, in-depth knowledge. And you can do this at Permaculture Boot Camp. What is that? That's where you can go stay with Paul Wheaton for a week. And remember, we were talking about homesteading work boot camp last week. You can go stay at his place for a week or stay for a couple of years. He has a whole program there where I think if you're there for a year and you reach certain benchmarks, you get a lifetime of rent on a 1 acre plot of land on his own. So if you're like, how do I get land? Check out Paul Wheaton's community. If you fit well with them, go up there, do one of his 1-week boot camps to fast track your skills. Maybe see if you want to go for the longer investment and see if you can end up with an acre of your own land. I think that's a really cool thing he's doing up there. That helps, like being somewhere for a year helps you know if you want to be in that community when we talk about community living. Plus, if you do and it's a good fit, he's got a way where you can have confidence that you're going to have somewhere to be and somewhere where you're investing your time and your skills into the development of the land. It's going to pay you back as well. So I think that's really, really close. I have put a link in the description to the boot camp if you're interested in that. And for the people on the live stream, I have just pasted it in the comments. Visit that link and it will tell you more information about ways that you can kickstart your permaculture journey under the guidance of the Duke of Permaculture himself, Paul Wheaton. I love thinking of him as the Duke, because if you meet Paul Wheaton, he's like this giant person. You're like, just put the crown on and it'll make you that much taller. He's a full of energy dude. Really like the work that he's doing now. And because he heard the thing about the rocket mass heater, the build that I did here is one of my events. He was like, hey man, we put together some plans that people can have, and I want to link the Living Free in Tennessee community with those plans. So if you go to the show notes and click on it, he has released rocket mass heater plans for free to our community. The link is in the show notes, and I did just paste it in the comments if you want to download that. Guys, the cool thing about rocket mass heaters, and today's whole show is about preparing for winter, is that they use about 10% of the wood that like my wood stove in my house uses. It's a little bit more than that for me. So because I have like one of the most efficient wood stoves you can buy in my house, but it is a significant, it's like I'm using 25% on my rocket mass heater versus what I use in my stove. The rocket mass heater, what it does is it burns everything. So you basically find little sticks and twigs. I like to make sure they're very dry, and you start a fire, and it just, through the way the air moves and then through guiding it, kind of like a masonry stove in the old days in Europe, it heats up a mass, and that continues to radiate heat. So for me, what I do is I burn for about 2 hours in the pump house. That heats up a mass and then keeps it above freezing so that my pipes don't freeze. And that's way better than running an electric heater down there or a kerosene heater down there or any of the other options that I have. It pulls a lot of power to keep it above freezing when we get below 5 degrees. Rocket mass heater does a great job. And if you're just building your homestead, definitely download these plans and check them out. It does take effort to build them. It's a really good use for a GSD weekend to get lots of people involved, because you're moving mass is what you're doing. And so if you have multiple hands, you don't have to have everybody moving all the mass, or one person moving all the mass. You can have multiple people. Anyway, check that out. Check out the Wheaton Labs Permaculture Boot Camp. And I'm really excited that Paul's doing that. I would love to see more homesteaders do boot camps so that people can see what it's really like before they commit and decide, is this what I really want to do with my life? Or am I more happy to support other homesteaders who have surplus for sale? Okay, next up is the frugality tip. And this one comes from Christian, who heard about the dish soap tip from last week. And so said, after hearing about the watered down dish soap, I had an expansion that might warrant being on the show. I've used watered down Dawn for a few years, and it never occurred to me that it might save me money. I mix it even thinner than Anna, so more like 1/4 to 1/5 of Dawn to the rest being water. And I put it in used foaming hand soap bottles from Bath and Body Works. It dispenses from them no problem once watered down. And that's like the foaming soap, right? That everybody's so excited about. I use this almost exclusively when washing hand washing dishes as I use them. And I use it to wash my hands too. Since it's good on food grease, it works well on oil and grime from mechanical work. And this is where the tip comes in, guys. So I use it regularly to wash my hands while working in the garage. I set myself up another bottle at work. It's way more gentle, and I personally find it's just as effective, if not better, than the gritty mechanic soaps, like the Gojo Orange, if you're familiar. Oh yeah, my skin still hurts from thinking about that soap. Come to think of it, it has probably saved me quite a bit of money there, since I don't buy that stuff at all anymore, and more than I might save on dishes. So basically the thing is, Dawn cuts through grease. And what he's saying is it makes a really good degreasing hand cleaner versus some of the harsher things you can get. And if you've ever seen them clean up an oil slick on the ocean, they use Dawn to get it off of the feathers and things of animals who've gotten all that motor oil on them, or not just the oil, it's not motor oil yet, that the crude oil on them, because it's gentle enough, it doesn't kill the animal. But if you leave the oil on the animal, it will kill the animal. And Dawn is the thing they use. So it totally makes sense that that would work within the context of washing motor oil off your hands. Okay, next up we have the weekly shopping report from Joe. And this is for 8/28/2022. So that was just like yesterday he went shopping. He went shopping on Sunday. So we made 4 stops on our weekly shopping run. The first stop was Community Chest to donate a box of books and some other things. Second was Dollar Tree, where I grabbed a drink and we picked up a few other items. I wanted some ointment from the health aisle, but there was none left. I saw a lot of empty hooks in that section, which is a big change from a month or two ago when they were really well stocked. So things are looking slim at Dollar Tree. Stop number 3 was Home Depot. A 2x4x8 is $4.75. Not long ago, it was $4.98. I don't remember if that was a few weeks ago or not. They have plenty of stocked lumber, tools, batteries, LED bulbs. Aldi was last. The store was very crowded. I think it was just because it was late in the morning. I didn't see people panic buying. Inventory looked good, except for limited quantities of meat. For example, there was pork loin, but no tenderloin. Beef looked pretty sparse too, but there were enough different cuts of various meats to cover all the shelves. I didn't recall seeing anybody in masks. I think the Kung Flu narrative is collapsing. At my last fill during the week, I paid $4.39.9 a gallon for untainted regular gas. I understand the 6th largest refinery in the country has been shut down due to an electrical fire. They're in Indiana, and a few surrounding states have declared states of emergency, and the parasites at DOT have waived our restrictions on truckers so they can bring in fuel. So this is the thing, guys. It sounds like stock was a little thin on the shelves. At the same time, what I know is happening is people who bought up a lot of inventory during the weird rolling outages, some of them have surplus inventory and have sales. Like the shirt I'm wearing today is something I got from Duluth Trading, because Duluth is just liquidating a bunch of stuff. And so if they have the style and size you want, you can actually get some pretty good deals for their usual pricing. And I'm seeing that in a lot of tangible goods areas. So just look for that. Think about the fact winter is coming, and some of us give Christmas presents, and maybe do some Christmas shopping now, because there's some really good deals to be had out there. Grab them while you can get them. If it's something you're actually going to use, don't just buy something because it's cheap. Buy it because you needed a shirt, right? And or whatever it is that is dropped in price, because as people liquidate the extra stock, it goes down. Now, on the food front, all I have seen is increased in prices. So that it appears that tangible goods are going through some downturns on the food prices. I've seen increases. I'm expecting some food costs to come down depending on what's happening. And Chef Brett has shared with me, he gets a weekly report just on big picture industry standards on food for what the prices of lettuce are going to do, or beef or pork. I will start sharing those on the Friday show, because we have too many segments this show before we get to the main topic of today's show. And I think it's very insightful. You can extrapolate from that what that's going to happen at the grocery store in a couple of months, because they're enough ahead of the curve. They have an idea of what's going on. Next up is Operation Independence, where we talk about building local ongoing revenue and stability into our lives, or learning a skill that helps you avoid having to pay a guy for a thing. Self-Reliance Festival digital tickets are going on sale this week. So if you can't come to Self-Reliance Festival, which you should totally come if you can come, because it's going to be awesome. It's going to be even better than last time, just like everyone is, right? We have a whole bunch of awesome speakers. We've got Toolman Tim's coming in out of Canada. We got Xavier Hawk coming in out of Florida. We've got Jack Spirko back in the house. In fact, he's bringing his buddy David, who I'm going to see if he wants to be on the panel, because if he can be on the panel about entrepreneurship, he should be on the panel. John Bush is coming in. I'll be speaking. Ken Berry's doing a workshop. Neethi Bali's coming in. Joel Riles is doing some stuff. I can't remember who's doing the first aid thing. It just slipped my mind. Anyway, we've got all sorts of stuff, good topics, different topics. We've got homeschooling. We've got ways of self-improvement. We've got analyzing how to work with people. We've got entrepreneurship, homesteading topics. Billy Bond will be there. Holy cow, it's like an all-star lineup. And not only that, at this event, people stay and you talk to them. You can actually talk to them. Before the event, we are doing a planting of the swales at John Willis's where you can talk to people even more because it's a smaller group because we keep the head count small the day before. Anyway, that's all happening September 30th for the swale planting workshop, and then October 1 and 2 Self-Reliance Festival. However, if you're like, dang it, I really can't get to Camden, Tennessee, Live Free Academy, John Bush reached out last time to see if he could record, and we kind of did a test to see if we could live stream it. The answer was yes. So this time we are selling digital tickets for people who just can't make it to Camden, Tennessee. Those are going on sale this week. So that's one thing under Operation Independence. And the other thing is I am going to be doing on September 10th a webinar at noon Central. We moved it from 4 p.m. Central to noon Central. I'm going to show you how to prepare fermented foods. Why? Because we are going into fall. Fall is a good time to ferment foods. The height of summer, not such a good time to ferment foods because it's too hot. Cooler temperatures and dealing with the rest of your surplus are ways to optimize things going into the fall. And our guts are not healthy in general in this country. And I think one of the reasons for that is that we have walked away from fermented foods and we don't have a healthy gut biome. And your digestive system dictates how well you're doing mentally, physically, and so many other ways. Since I started purposely building ferments back in my life, I have felt a lot better than before when I was just eating like quick pickles and that sort of thing. We've started using vinegar instead of ferments. That's kind of what happened in commercial food because it's safer because there's nothing living, right? We walked away from raw milk, so you're not getting anything from your milk. All of those things. Cheeses are alive, by the way. That's one of the things that we are eating that is basically fermented, right? There's a process that happens there. So I'm doing fermentation basics. I'm going to cover how to do sauerkraut and cucumbers for pickles, which end up with the like garlicky kosher pickle flavors, really delicious. And I'm doing those because if you learn those two things, you can extrapolate from that on how to then ferment beets or make kimchi or make fermented hot sauces. Once you have the basics and you understand the salt-only method and the making a brine method, you're good to go. We will talk about troubleshooting problems that come up, how to know if it's bad. That is going to be September 10th, and I have put the link in the show notes to that. If you are a member, you just log into the membership portal to sign up for it, and I send you the link because that's included with your membership. If not, then just head over to Live Free Academy and sign up for that. I have thrown the link in the comments. With that, it's time for the main topic of today's show. Winter is coming. I think I was saying winter is coming before it became a thing because of Game of Thrones, but whatever. It is August. It is so hot that none of us want to go out at this time of day because we're in the middle of the day right now. And first thing I'm thinking of is how am I, when do I need to take the outdoor shower and blow air through all the pipes? And when am I going to stop using the solar water heater because that doesn't overwinter? And do I have enough firewood? You wouldn't think that August is the time you should think of this, but it's totally the time you should think of this because between now and whenever our first freezes, we get frosts in October. We'll probably have a deep freeze by November. Last year, it didn't come till December. I had extra time. I've got a lot of things to do. Garlic planting comes to mind. That's got to happen, right? So winter is coming. And the reason I'm starting to think about it now is I know how full my schedule is. I know how full tactical schedule is. We added sheep this year. They're extra time. We need to make sure they're taken care of for the winter. We've never gotten ready for sheep for the winter before. Like there's all this stuff on a homestead that things change when it freezes. My first year on the homestead, I didn't think about it enough. And I had chickens only. And I needed to keep the chicken water from freezing, and the chickens live outside. And I didn't think about it until the first freeze was coming. And guess what? I could not order any chicken water heaters because they were all sold out that first year. That was 15 years ago. Because I couldn't order them, what I ended up doing was using a set of metal buckets I had for the chickens, putting one in the coop in the morning when I got up, and they'd all drink the water out of it, taking the one that was in there that had frozen overnight and putting it by my wood stove so it could defrost. 2 hours later, switching out the buckets. 2 hours later, 2 hours every day, all day long, I was changing out metal buckets. And that is, my friends, why we think about winter in August now. Because right now, you can order heat bulbs, stock tank heaters, waterers that will not freeze, little buddy heaters. You can get kerosene right now. You can't get kerosene in about 3 months in my area. Just not a thing. I use kerosene actually as a backup heat source. All of that's available right now, and you can't count on it being available when you need it. It's kind of like when the tornado hit here in March of 2020, and everybody suddenly needed generators. Within a day, generators doubled in price, and then there weren't any available. Right? So winter is coming. If it's your first winter on a homestead, you're going to want to listen to the show. If it's not, you're just going to want to listen to live vicariously and just be gleeful that you're not living on a homestead and don't have to deal with all this stuff, right? So here are the steps we go through, and we brainstorm everything we know. And every year this list is a little bit different here. And then we divide it into categories. And the categories are the no-kill list, the comfort list, and the SHTF list. Okay. So we'll be like, the it would be nice list is everything. And then everything that's required to keep things alive goes on the no-kill list. We do that list first. Then the comfort list, you do that list second. And then the SHTF, that's like, if all things go wrong, I really think we should have X. Then we think about if we're going to address that or not, if it works within the budget and our time, right? And we do take some steps for SHTF, but mostly by the time we've done no kill and we've done comfort, SHTF is basically taken care of. That's the deal. And SHTF has happened here once. And it was luckily not in the winter. It was in March and it was warm out. So it was more about keeping things cold in the freezers than keeping things warm. But SHTF, like if the power is out for a long time in the winter here, I don't have water. That's actually something we're addressing, hopefully, in about another 8 weeks at the food forest install. Also involves the installation of the gravity fed water. I haven't sourced my tank, so it may just be the pipes are run and I still haven't hooked up the system. We'll see. It's not a super high priority. It's just like, while we have the earthwork machine out and can dig a ditch that we don't have to dig by hand, let's just dig that ditch and put the stuff in it and cover it back up. And then plant stuff on top of it. So we don't have to unplant things. So, you know what I'm saying? That's the way everything works. It's like everything's related to everything here. So I like to divide it up into livestock, humans, pets, gardens, water systems, like my water gardens. And then I think about fuel and backups. That's how I usually talk through this every year. And here's what we've got up. First of all, we have rabbits this year. It's our second winter with the rabbits. Last year we went into winter not really sure what we would do to keep the water from freezing. Tactical used heat tape. So he's going to need to set up the heat tape system again. And then when it got below zero, we actually put a cover over their cages. Rabbits do okay in the cold as long as you keep them out of the wind and dry. But it was like, it's unusually cold and then it's going to get warm again. And they may not have all the fur that they need. So what we do is we put a tarp tent over it and put a heat lamp under that just to give just to take the edge off, right? And Red Flyer Media says, we got a taste of SHTF in February in here in Texas. Yeah, there was like that one time in Texas where it never got above freezing and everybody's pipes froze and they ran out of gas at the gas stations. If you already had your fuel stored for that, you kind of made it through. But even people I knew who had lots of fuel stored, who were running generators and such for things, they still ran out and then had to go wait in long lines. And, you know, it was a big mess there. So So I always think of it this way. Rabbits, the first thing to worry about to keep rabbits alive is, can they get water? Food is secondary. Water is first, then food, and then shelter. And so it's really like, what do our heating lamps look like? Like, I dropped one the other day, I broke the bulb, and now I got to get another bulb, those sorts of things. Or are we going to heat them in a different way? Can we just bring them closer to the house easily and just sort of, if you're near the house, you get heat radiating off the house. Is that going to be enough? Those sorts of things. The sheep, it's our first year with the sheep. The biggest struggle with the sheep is going to be the water thing. So we have to decide, how are we going to keep the water from freezing? Or are we going to do that thing where we change water out? The problem with some ruminants, goats included, is when you have so with the goats, what we have is an extension cord and then a stock tank heater and a tub, and they drink from the bathtub. Goats chew on things. So then it's like, okay, how do we keep them from chewing on the cord? Luckily, the stock tank heater cord is coated in metal. So it's like in a flexible conduit sort of thing. So they're not chewing on that. But we've been really worried they're going to chew on that extension cord. And one day we will dig the little trench and bury some Romex, some like underground wire to run the power to the stock tank heater. But that's not happening this year. That's on our comfort. So that's a comfort list, guys. The extension cord is no kill. The comfort list is like permanently install that crap so we don't have to run the damn extension cord every year. And I'm pretty sure we're still not getting into it this year. So we need to figure out how the sheep are going to get water, if we're going to be just changing out the buckets every couple hours, or what we're going to do. And hay, because they need to eat hay. Shelter with sides. So right now we shelter them from the top, but when there's wind blowing and it's cold, they're going to need shelter from the sides. Plus we're moving them still in the winter as well. So we have to figure that out. That's going to be some hard conversations. And then making sure I have enough minerals here for them to get access to, so that if we get snowed in, it's not like, oh, I got to go to the store and get whatever. Red Flyer Media said one of the problems with SHTF was that wastewater and sewage stopped working. People pooping in grocery bags, except for me, because I have a composting toilet. Yeah, so I have that covered by having I have outhouses that are composting outside. So if water stops here, which means I can't flush unless I dump a bucket, I can just take all the number 2s out there and just let it mellow here. And it's cool because I just put wood chips on top of it. It composts. It's sanitary. I have a way of dealing with it. And that's something that during that freeze in Texas, guys, I got a note from somebody who lives in a 2-bedroom apartment who had a newborn. And because of their preps, they were able to stay warm. And they had a bucket system where you put sawdust on your waste. And they had that in the closet just in case. And so when the power went out, eventually their water stopped working, but they had water stored. They had a way to keep their apartment above freezing. And they had a compost system. I was so proud of them, because you wouldn't think in an apartment that you want to keep a composting bucket system, but they had that so that they could just make it through and not have to smell what it smells like to let number 2 mellow in your toilet. And you can't have too many of those or else you can't flush and it backs up, right? So that was pretty cool. It is important to think about that when you get to have, when you get into that. So we have so on the sheep, we're way ahead of the game. Water is our problem. We already bought all the hay we think we need for the winter, which is about 42 bales of Timothy grass. And we have them in a dry location in the barn. And I did that because I was worried that we were going to run out of the ability to buy hay. And I've been watching the price of hay go up. So it started at $8 a bale. We got it at $10 a bale. And I think it's going to be $15 by the time we get into October, which is when I used to buy hay. So that is a thing. And then the shelter. Pigs. First thing we have to do is worry about water, right? And again, last year we put a stock tank heater in their water. I think that's what's going to happen this year. Make sure we have enough feed on hand. So if we get iced in for a few weeks, we're not worried about feeding the pigs. And then lots of bedding. So I use Timothy grass for the sheep. I use cheaper hay for bedding for the goats and the sheep, goats and the pigs. When it gets really, really, really cold out, you have to think about shelter, right? And what's important is dry. So you need a cover and then wind not hitting from the sides. And then with pigs, if you give them a bunch of hay, they will make themselves a nest and they will burrow into the nest and you'll be like, where is the pig? There's no pig anymore. The pig weighs 600 pounds. You would think I could see the pig. Nope, no pig. And all of a sudden you'll say, pig. And then this haystack will erupt and a pig comes out because they're getting food. So they will like make themselves completely buried in hay. It's something I actually kind of find entertaining to watch because they're like, I am cozy in here, but the food's out there. So I will leave and then I'll go back into my little cozy bed. If that's dry hay, that works. If it's wet hay, not so well. So it's important to think about water, then feed, then shelter, and bedding. Goats, same thing. We just need to make sure the water won't freeze. We have that system. Like the first year we went through this list, guys, every one of these things, it was like new system, new system, new system, new system. Right now it's like find it, make sure it still works, have it ready to go, have a schedule for when we're just going to put it in there and have it going so that we just have to turn everything on if it's going to freeze. And then enough feed on hand again. Feed is kind of a sore spot for most homesteaders right now because the prices keep going way up. And then bedding. Again, I'm going to have to find a cheaper. I'll probably get some rolls of hay from my neighbor who rolls hay every year because he usually sells them to me for like 20 a roll or so. It's just a long drive to go get them. But, you know, it's not Timothy grass. It's a Timothy blend and it makes really good bedding and it puts seeds everywhere, which is why I don't use it in my garden. I don't know if his prices are going to go up, though. So we have a guy here locally who will deliver rolls. If we tarp the roll really well, it keeps it dry, and then we can peel it off. It's kind of hard to peel the hay off, but it totally works. And then finally, ducks. First thing, right? Water, feed, bedding. We don't usually need to add heat to the ducks if it gets cold. When it gets really super cold, like 10 degrees, ducks stop going to bed, and they go into my pond, and they float in the pond for the night. And the reason they do that is that water is 55 degrees. So if it's like 10 degrees in the coop and 55 degrees in the pond, they'll stay there. And then I worry about predators. So I try to make sure they have lots of deep litter to burrow down into. But sometimes it's just like, well, I'm not going to walk into the pond on a 10-degree night to chase you out of that pond. So I hope that we don't have raccoons tonight. Dogs help with that, by the way. But I've lost a duck or two over the years. So that's everything with the livestock. And I really, really remember the first few years of just dealing with water not freezing was a lot of work. So if it's your first year on a homestead, go talk to other homesteaders about what they specifically do to keep things from freezing. Don't talk to the ones, if you are on grid, don't talk to the ones who are like, this is how I do it off grid. It is harder off grid, by the way. And there are lots of off-grid things you can do, but the lowest and easiest thing to get implemented, especially if it's your first year, is if you can get electricity to those dishes, having ways to keep the water from freezing, and just being able to plug it in way easier than having to do any of the off-grid things that need to happen. Or I had to take, like, I still have to take an axe to water sometimes here where it's like for the ducks because I don't have an antifreeze system for it. One of the things I like to use with poultry and dogs is a metal bucket they make this dog dish base that heats. So it's 2 pieces. The base can get wet. I love using that for poultry and dogs and animals that won't knock the bucket over. Goats and sheep are a different thing. They will knock the bucket over. They knock the bucket over now if we're using a bucket. So keeping their water from freezing is going to be kind of a big deal, I think. And it may just be as simple as we need to find a stand that the bucket fits in so it's harder to tip over, and then put a stock tank heater in that or a heated base or something. What we also don't want to do is start a fire or burn the animal, or I may just end up just flipping changing water out, and is what it is. In the winter, we will have fewer sheep than we do right now just because processing time is coming. So that's what we're doing for all the livestock. Now let's go to humans. The first thing we need to do with humans is keep us hydrated. So again, water. And that may not seem like a big deal if you live in the city. I live in the state of Tennessee, where we bury lines 18 inches unless we don't. That's right. You heard me. Unless we don't, because most winters don't get super cold. Sometimes winters get super cold. So our buildings are not built to withstand the differences that happen when it gets below 5 degrees. Like you get down to 10 degrees, you're probably okay. You get to 5 or below 0, stuff starts happening. Personally, in my house, I have to drip my faucets below 21 degrees. That's the way it is right now. And that's just because my plumbing is in the attic. The attic does not stay above freezing. I could put a heat lamp up there. It's not enough. Sometimes when I know it's going to be below 0, I literally open the attic door and I shoot heat up there, or I drain the whole system. That's what I have to do. I have to think about water. This means I need stored water, because if I don't have stored water and then we run out of water, I'm running down to the creek with a bucket and an axe to, actually it comes out at 55 degrees. So I don't usually have to do that, the axe part. I have had to, and bringing it up. So what I do is I keep stored water here, and then I know I keep an eye on the outside temperature, and I drip under a certain amount. In fact, my weather station outdoor probe is not showing me an accurate reading, so I need to update that. So that's something I'm putting on the list for comfort to make my life easier. I will do that. Second thing is shelter. I have a beautiful house, but I need to think about, are there ways winter is getting in here that's not good? The gutter comes to mind. The gutter on the front of my house from the build from Taj Mahal has not been redone, and so it drips. If we get a freeze, I'm going to have big old icicles in my way, and that's not good. So I need to think about finishing that, fixing the roof. I need to find somebody to hire to finish that out, and we will get that done, right? So shelter. Shelter is pretty easy for me because I'm already in a house. Firewood. So for me, it's heat. This is something you've never heard me say before. It is August. I have all the firewood I need. Let me say that again. It is August. I have all the firewood I need. This has never happened. Usually right now I'm like, shit, we need to get firewood. This time I just decided to suck it up and buy all the firewood I need in April. And it didn't really get here till June. So I have a bunch of firewood. I have more firewood than I'm going to need this year unless we have a really bad winter. And all I'm doing with firewood now is making sure it's covered with a tarp, and then moving the rest of last year's firewood up near the house because that's the most seasoned. So I'll use it first. And then we will have to look through the heating system, which is to say it's time to sweep the chimney and inspect the stove and all of those things. But that's humans. And then lastly, I do make sure we have enough food stored. That's just part of my normal thing though, guys. I can the food. So I am 16 jars short of green bean goal, but and I don't have as much salsa as usual, but that's okay. We'll make it through. There's lots of pork. We're just going to eat pork. That's what we're going to do all winter long. Next, we have pets. Now, pets are under control because their water does not freeze. You know why? Because it's inside my house. It's above freezing inside my house, so that's not a problem. And when they go outside, if there's no source for water, they will just come back inside and eat. Drink. And there's a cat door for the cats to get in, and they come in and whatever. So that's all handled. The only thing for dogs is and cats is backup plans, making sure I have enough extra food for if we get iced in, making sure that they have lots of extra bedding to stay warm, making sure that anything that might happen, if I need meds for them, I have those things on hand. They're really easy. They're almost not worth mentioning, except for that they're an important part of the family, so we mention them. Next up is the garden. So right now we're thinking about spring bed preparation. Last year's garlic patch has already been prepped for next spring. Now I'm starting to look at the other rows of what's there. Like my squash is kind of winding up for the year. I think I'm going to pull out the squash rows. Those are going to become the garlic rows. So I'm going to prepare those for planting in October. And then the other rows we'll put to bed with a cover crop for next spring. And that's all happening there. And then mulching things that need to be mulched. Like I have a banana tree that needs to have a big old mesh thing put around it. And then all the leaves, when they fall, we'll rake them and cover the outside of that tree. That's the way my buddy AutoFab keeps his banana trees overwintering. I've never managed to overwinter a banana, so we'll try figs. Likewise, figs. There's a little fig tree over at Base Camp that is alive, so we want to try and eke that thing through and get it so that it comes back next year. So it's going to be under a big pile of mulch. If I had rosemary, I'd do the same thing. Oh, I do have rosemary. I'll go look at that rosemary plant and see if it looks like it's going to happen. And then, of course, any cover cropping, it's start planning for your cover crops now, because you want to sow them in time for them to take hold so they overwinter. What's a cover crop? It's basically something you plant on your garden bed that's easy to kill back, that will add nutrient back in the soil. It's something you can do instead of mulching to get your beds ready. And, I don't know what I'll use for a cover crop this year. I usually use clovers and other things, but we'll see. Just kind of adding nitrogen back into the soil by cover cropping. I did that last year, and I just took all the extra seeds I had and scattered them around. And turned out I had a lot of arugula this year, and a couple of broccoli plants, but it was just because that's what I had to seed with, and that was fine. Next up, we think about the water gardens. What happens here is I tear down the hydroponic system. Like, the tomato system will be completely torn apart. The pumps will be brought inside where they don't go below freezing in case there's a tiny bit of water left. And then there's not places for that to break. This year, I think we're leaving the water gardens in place, the hydro systems in front of my house, except for the pipe tomatoes. I think the pipe tomatoes are getting replaced with bucket tomatoes, because bucket tomatoes work better than pipe tomatoes. So if you've not been here, you don't know what I'm talking about, but I have tomatoes that are growing up the full length of my house that shade the south side of my house so that it does not get as hot in my house, and it grows my tomatoes, and that's all grown with water. The aquaponics system, I end up draining the 2 wicking beds and I have to water them this year, actually, because they're under Taj Mahal. It used to be just the rain would water them, and that would be enough. And I have a couple perennials in there, so I have to put that on a watering schedule. And then I can also grow greens and things in there if I cover them. So I'll decide if I feel like growing greens in there. What I'm not going to do is leave the water flowing through the wicking bed, because if it freezes, it'll break the pipes, and then I have to take the whole flipping bed apart, and I don't want that. So top water from now. And the other thing is, when I pull the plug on a wicking bed, the quality of water that comes out of that's pretty dirty, because it's been touching soil a little bit. Doing those one at a time instead of all in the same day is a little easier on the fish, because then the sediment can settle. So that's what we have to do there. And then we put a stock tank heater in the sump of the aquaponics system so that water stays above 36 degrees. And then it's still going to circulate into my ebb and flow bed. I only drain the ebb and flow bed in a very, very, very cold situation. And I rarely lose plants in the ebb and flow bed all winter long. So that's usually where I'm growing the lettuce if I'm going to grow lettuce outside. So that's what happens with the water beds. And then my last thing is just thinking about fuel and backups. Generators if you need them, or an inverter that you can hook up to your car if that's the route you want to go. Making sure your fuel storage is topped off. Fuel has dropped in price, I noticed. So it might be a good time to make sure everything's topped up. Some people do the once a month thing. I was doing that for a while. I actually what I do now is I stack up cans and refill them. And I stack up cans and I refill them. And that is for propane, because I have a propane heater I use. And I have also propane I use for roasting coffee, and propane's great. It doesn't smell bad. I have kerosene and kerosene heaters because it's not very expensive to buy kerosene. I already have them. Kerosene heaters are something I can put in the pump house if I don't feel like lighting the rocket mass heater. Yep. I'm going to get a frowny face from Paul Wheaton on that one. Sometimes I do run the kerosene down there just because it's been a busy day and I didn't make time to heat everything up the right way. So it's one of my backup plans. And then I heat with wood in my house. So all that firewood I talked about, that is all for my personal heat. I cook on the stove too when I'm heating with it. It's like a giant crock pot. So, crock pot stews and soups. I just have a coated cast iron pan that's red because Dutch oven, because red's like a superior color for Dutch ovens, just for the record. And I'll put that on there, and I'll put a bunch of stuff in it in the morning, and then that's dinner at night. And if the stove's going all day, that's just a way to reuse the heat, and I like to do that. But a couple of times in the winter, I got the flu. do you know how hard it is to keep your wood stove going when you have the flu? Because what happens when you have the flu is you sleep a lot. And while I do have a really awesome stove and it doesn't need to have wood fed into it all the time, like even the act of the air touching your skin when you have the flu is really hard. And yeah, sure, tactical would help me with that. But I have those oil circulated electric heaters, and they plug in and they act like a radiator. And if I get sick, those go on. I keep my house from going below freezing. I stay comfortable. I pay more of an electricity bill, but that's my backup. And then my backup to my backup, see what I'm saying? That's the kerosene heaters or the propane space heaters that I have. So it's wood first, then electricity, and then burnable fuels. And that has worked for me for 15 years here. So from there, I divide that big old list into no-kill, comfort list, and SHTF plans. The no-kill list looks more like this. So I have the whole list of all the animals and what they need, right? And the humans and the gardens and all of that stuff. I prioritize animals living over plants living. So I start with making sure we've thought about how not to freeze water, making sure there's firewood for us, making sure all the shelter is handled, and making sure we've thought about how we're feeding everybody. That's my no-kill list. And then I expand it out to gardens. But I do all of the animals first. In fact, we have to think about livestock guardian dogs this year, and they eat a lot. So that's a thing. And that means even more storage of food, by the way. So that's on the list. And then I start thinking about the banana tree, the fig tree, and the rosemary, like getting those all tucked away. And then I start thinking about the garden beds. And then I start thinking about the hydro system. So you see how I do that. That's the no-kill list. Once that's done, we're on to the comfort list. And this is things like winter clothing upgrades. I have winter clothing that can get me through the winter, no problem. Some of them are starting to look a little ratty. That's okay. I'm on a homestead. Sometimes I go out into the real world in my really ratty homestead clothes. Not super excited about that. Plus, technologies have changed in some things. There's other ways, better ways to stay warm. So I might upgrade my shoes, or I might get some, like I'm getting long underwear this year because I've had long underwear, like the same long underwear for 5 years, and they're starting to get little holes in them, and that's fine. They're under my clothes. Nobody can see that, but you know, Duluth was having a sale on long underwear, so I got some Duluth long underwear. They're not bad. I like silk long underwear best, but I'm trying these, and if I see a good deal on silk long underwear, I'll totally get some of those. So that, you know, it's things like that. Do I have enough socks? Are my socks in good shape? Like that is a comfort thing and not a no-kill thing, because you can deal with it. And if you're like the typical American, like 7 people have given you winter jackets and you're like, oh, why do I have so many jackets? I don't actually, I pared down all of that stuff so that I just have the stuff I like. But I already did that purge a long time ago. And then automating the anti-freeze system. So we talk about keeping the water from freezing. And an example of automation is that the stock tank heater I put in my aquaponics sump automatically turns on when things drop below a certain temperature. But if you're using a heat lamp or a different kind of water heater to keep things from freezing, what you can do, they make these little plugs that sense when it goes below 36 degrees and they turn on automatically. Having those everywhere where you need to keep things from freezing. If you use heat tape on your pipes, for example, you get one of those plugs, it just turns on, and then you don't have to think about turning it on. So that's a comfort thing. That's not a no-kill thing for me. That's a comfort thing. And it actually human proofs the whole process, which is super nice. And then I think about the backup heating, because I've got my wood. So then backup heating is making sure the kerosene is topped off and the propane is topped off and all of that. I've already bought my propane for the winter in my big tank, but I have a bunch of little tanks that I can move around places, and those are really nice. Then the next comfort thing is looking at my car kit. What's in my car kit? The glass bottle of water in my car is not staying in my car for the winter, because what happens to the glass bottle of water in my car, and it happened last year because I forgot, is what happens to water when it freezes? It gets bigger. You know what happens to water in a glass bottle that gets bigger? it breaks the bottle. And then you know what happens when it melts? It gets all over your car and you have broken glass in your car. So I change water. I always carry water with me. I change it to a different way. I use a plastic bottle with the lid like upright with the lid kind of unscrewed and hope that that works and keep my eye on it. But then I'm also thinking about making, like I want to make sure I have gloves and a hat and a rain poncho. You can get like $1 or $2 rain ponchos. Those are great to have in your car so that if you're out and you get stuck out and you're going to have to walk somewhere and you didn't bring your stupid raincoat because you're an idiot, you have actually a backup plan. Or if you have to change a tire in the winter, right? And you didn't bring your raincoat and there's people driving by, like you have something. It's very nice to stay dry. So I go through all of that and think about how am I staying warm? Maybe I have a lighter in there, but maybe have a candle. If I get stuck in the car, I can light the candle. It'll take the edge off if I don't have gas to run. Extra fuel in your car. There's a good one. Those jerry cans are great for that because they don't let the smell of the fuel out. It's just time to think about your car kit and what's in it. How appropriate is it for winter? Like those space blankets are really awesome. You can put them on the ground if you need to be on the ground for something, or you can wrap up in them. They're really awesome and they don't take up that much space. So that is a comfort thing. It might also be a survival thing depending on how much you drive. It just depends. And then this is not on the no-kill list, but I'd be really grumpy if I messed it up. And it's taking the outdoor kitchen needs to have air blown through the lines, I believe, to make it winterized. The outdoor shower, same thing. And then I have a solar water heater. So right now, like my buddy's visiting from Florida. And yesterday at about 4 p.m, he was like, I'm thinking of taking a shower. I'm like, your hot water is solar heated if you take it right now. So in the afternoon here, the solar water heater has been circulating on its own timer because it's all about having the stuff automated. And that water is heated. In the winter time, if I leave that on, it will freeze. It will break the copper pipes. So we have to drain it, blow air through that to make sure there's not residual water and winterize that. I need to decide the timing on that because right now I don't use propane to heat my water when I'm using the water heater unless it's below 120 degrees. Then I top it off to 120 degrees. Well, when I turn that off, then I'm all using the propane again. So, obviously in August, I'm not going to do that, but October, probably just going to take the whole thing offline and just go with the on-demand water heater for the rest of the time. Need to flush the on-demand water heater once a year. I should have done it in June. I might as well do it now before it's the middle of winter, right? So stuff like that. That's all on the comfort list. And then my SHTF fan is just deciding, do I need another generator or not? I have one. So I don't really need it, but it'd be nice to have a bigger one. So I'm just deciding, does that work in the budget or not? If not, I can make do with what I have. How much extra food should I have? There's a point where it gets ridiculous. And then extra tarps. Tarps are like great in an SHTF situation. Your roof blew off, tarp it. You got to go outside and build a little shelter because you can't be in your house. Use a tarp. Got to drive somewhere and we don't have a cover on the back of the truck. Tarp. The sheep need a shelter that has sides and you've got something, but it has no sides. Tarp it, right? So this is the time of year where we start thinking, how many different ways can we use tarps? Do we have enough tarps? Do we have backup tarps? Tarps are awesome. So that's everything about getting ready for winter this year. I am usually a lot more panicked about winter than I am right now. And I think it's because last year when we had this meeting, we sat down and we made the list. And then we started thinking about how can we make it easier every year? Because there was this whole thing I did to set up every year and then undid all the stuff to tear down. And we took an eye towards automation, and that's made a big difference here. And also there are 2 people working on it, so that makes a big difference too. But having the firewood already means I'm not thinking about that. Having most of the anti-water freezing systems in place, so I don't have to think about that. The rocket mass heater being in the pump house, not needing to think about that. Like these little things make a big difference. And so if it's your first year, do the best you can. Choose 1 or 2 things on your no-kill list that are a pain in your ass. And say, why is it a pain in my ass? And if the answer is because X, because it's not automated, what can I do to automate that? Think about automating it. If you can automate it, choose one or two things to build into your budget in compromise of comfort, even if it's buying some timers, if it's getting those little sensors on, whatever it is, if it's permanently running an electric cable underground somewhere, I don't know, do that, because the next year it's that much easier, and you can do another two things, and the next year it's easier. You see how that goes? It's like a cycle. So anyway, I hope you found this podcast helpful. I'd love to know what you're doing for the winter. Did I miss anything important? Let me know. You can reach me, Nicole at livingfreeintennessee.com. If you do like the show and the work I'm doing here, you can support me in two ways. One, get your coffee at Hollow Roast. It makes great Christmas presents. Just saying. That's all over at hollowroast.com. Two, consider becoming a member. That's over at livingfreeintennessee.com. Just go there, click on membership to learn more. With that, guys, make it a great week. Okay, so I had a couple questions come through that were later than when I was talking about it. So Mona says, do you plan to have the separate goat sheep situation in the winter still? Consolidation might help with the workload as well. I don't know. If the sheep and the goats get along, we may actually bring them together. My concern is that the goats have figured out how to run through electric fences. So it's all about if I get them trained. And right now, a lot of our attention is in training the LGDs. Tomorrow is the first day the LGDs get to intermingle with the sheep. I'm hoping nobody gets hurt or shot. I know that sounds terrible. But they seem to be getting along really well. The dogs really like the sheep. I'm more worried about Henry going after the dogs than I am about the dogs going after the sheep. But then if violence starts, I don't know what the dogs will do. So it's kind of a time where we'll probably have, I was going to do dogs on leashes, but they're not comfortable on leashes. So I don't know how we're going to do that, but we're going to supervise them, which means a lot of my day tomorrow is going to be spent hanging out with dogs and sheep on a rotation with tactical, so that we can just observe what they're doing. And once we're confident they can move together, that's going to make a huge difference here. Once that's done, then we need to decide, do the goats integrate or not? Now, these dogs were raised around goats, so they're probably okay with goats, but we just got to watch it. And there's only going to be one goat left, and I actually probably should decide if I keep her. I really like her, though. She's like my pet goat, but maybe I shouldn't have a pet goat here. She's a great goat. Josie says, when I lived off-grid in New Mexico, I built and ran a bucket composting system based on the Humanure handbook, and it worked great. Yes. I haven't tried that for keeping water from freezing, but I know you can circulate through compost water, and it will keep it above freezing, and that compost puts off heat. So that is one way that you can do that. Any other questions? Can you just do some sheep minus Henry at first? Maybe. Right now we have them over with the boys, and the girls are over here to give birth, and I don't want to bring the LGDs over here. So we will see. Jen says you need cameras. We totally need cameras. We need internet over there too, because that would help, and then I could monitor on cameras. It's actually a great idea. Hey, Brian, if you're listening to this, we need to expand the mesh network. Anyway, that's cool. Anyway, other questions, guys? If not, we're going to wrap up. I had one other question I accidentally unstarred. It may have been this one from Mona, which is put the round bale upright, not on the side. It makes it easier. The worst time to find haze in the spring, right before the next harvest. And how? I did that wrong one year, and I went to like Tractor Supply, didn't even have the ability to get hay. And that's where I learned the hard lesson about not having enough hay. And luckily it was for bedding and not for food. So I was able to get use the pine shavings at Tractor Supply for bedding. But that was the first year where I was like, okay, we buy all the hay for the bedding that we think we need, all of it in advance, because if you don't, it's just gone. And spring, it's that early spring, 100% that you cannot get hay because everybody's used it all up for the winter. It is. So Anna has a question above. I have no idea what it is. You're probably the person I accidentally. Anna, you're going to have to paste it back in, man. I don't see it. Did it have all caps? I don't see it. And here it is. Yep, you're the one. You're the one I lost. There you go. How does having a wood stove affect your insurance premiums? Also, will you please post a link to the heater you have now? I'm about to build a wood stove as part of my plan. So my wood stove has not negatively impacted my insurance because I have I have electric heating that I can use. So if you only have a wood stove and no other officially endorsed heating system, your homeowner's insurance doesn't like it. But because I have that other system, I didn't say, they assume that's what I use. And I have a wood stove, so I use the wood stove instead. So that didn't really affect it. I'm trying to think. They didn't even give me a hard time about having a wood stove. That being said, that's going to be very localized how that's going to happen. So I have a friend across the state who wants to put a wood stove in, and his insurance company says it has to be installed by a contractor who's certified, which makes sense. Like my wood stove was already here. There was never any question about that, right? So his insurance says it has to be put in by a certified person, and to get a certified person way out to his house to do it is really freaking expensive. And so then I was like, well, if you put it in and get it inspected, can you do it that way? I don't know if he's answered that. The other thing is some insurance companies don't like wood stoves at all. So like farmers insurance, I've heard, is more likely to not be freaked out by a wood stove versus other insurers. That is not my insurer. My insurer never really had an issue with it. Now I use the Hearthstone soapstone wood stove, which it recirculates the gas when you have it working right and burns that before it lets it out. Plus it heats, it weighs like 420 pounds and heats up all that massive stone and continues to radiate. So it's not exactly like a rocket mass heater. A rocket mass heater is burning way more efficiently, way hotter than mine, and way less fuel because it's burning all of it. What comes out of the pipe of the rocket mass heater is steam, not smoke. Mine still has smoke coming out. If I redo my house, I may put a rocket mass heater in here. It's just that I'm not there on the remodel side right now. And you need to have something that can hold up the mass of the rocket mass heater, or else you will break your floorboards, right? So I have the Hearthstone soapstone one. A friend of mine was just here for Homestead boot camp, decided to get a soapstone one after talking to the people at Fireplaces and More in Cookeville, which is a really good place to go to get advice on wood stoves if you're in the state of Tennessee. They've been in business for a long time. They've seen lots of different wood stoves. They know what size you should get. They know the different brands. They only recommend the premium brands, and that makes sense. I mean, you can just buy one at Tractor Supply and it works. I had a boxwood stove for 5 or 6 years. When I went from that boxwood stove, though, and I have 1,200 square feet, to my soapstone stove, which was the smallest one they sell at the time, although they sell a smaller one now, my wood usage dropped by 75%. So the money I put, it was like $4,000 into a wood stove, kind of offset the effort of having to get all of that wood. So as far as insurance, you're going to have to talk to insurance. And the problem with that is asking permission of insurance companies raises red flags. So I don't know. I would try farmers and make sure your stove is installed right from a fire safety standpoint. Like they're not wrong when they say make sure a certified person puts it in, or make sure you get it installed in a way that you know is safe. The codes in my state for like recommendations, it's not even codes aren't really a thing here in exactly the same way as like say Oregon. Their requirements for wood stoves are not as stringent as other places. Mine is up to standards of other states. So it's way beyond what the other codes require as far as heat shielding and all of that on the hearth. And that was something that when we redid the hearth, I made sure that was done. and it's got way more space between the stove and the wall than it's required to. It's, for me, it's just like that extra measure of it's not fireproof, but layer of safety between the wood stove and the wall. So anyway, I hope that helps you figure out your wood stove thing. Fireplaces and more, Cookeville, Tennessee. They are not a sponsor of the show, but they are people. If you call them, you may not get to talk to them for days. It just depends because they're super busy. Everybody goes there. If you go in, you may have to wait till they talk to you. But when you talk to them, they will give you a lot of really good information. So that's that. And then definitely download that free rocket mass heater guide that Paul Wheaton gave us, because just reading about those and learning about those, it's I always, when I first heard about rocket mass heaters, I was like, I don't know. And then seeing one work is totally different. And it's a lot of work to put them in, but they are very efficient. It's very impressive. And there are different, he's got a whole, he just did a Kickstarter, a whole system of different ways of using them, cook stoves and all sorts of different stuff. So he's taken the concept of rocket mass heater and expanded it out a million places. Anyway, looks like we are out of questions for today, guys. I will be back on Wednesday at 12:30 with John Willis and Bear Independent. Thanks for joining today.